Hello, I'm Alexandre Fischer. As you can tell, I come from France. And as I was sitting there, what else could I say about me? Because it's really not about me today. But so I live in France. My passion in life was law. And so I became a lawyer, a litigation attorney. I worked in France, in the US. But on my path, I came across the very ideas that we'll discuss today, Christian Science, this deep spirituality that goes back to Jesus' teachings minus creeds, minus dogmas, minus you got to do this, but really a deep, empowering spirituality. So I came across it during my professional career, and I took it with me. So I let go of my law practice to become a full-time Christian Science practitioner who is just someone who practice those ideas. So today we'll talk about the topic of fear. And in essence, it's fun to see that we'll talk about a topic of something to make sure it's out of our life as much as possible. Nelson Mandela had this to say about it. He said, and I quote, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. What do we do in situations where a diagnosis comes, or we're about to lose our job, or our dream college is, well, not on the map anymore for us, or and on and on and on. All those things that make this really uneasy feeling coming to thought that we call fear, anxiety, and so on. I'll be a bit surprising to start. What does the common theory say about fear? Well, the common theory is that fear is very helpful. It's a lie, but that's what the theory says. And they say, no, it's not a lie. You know, have you heard of fight or flight? Well, if you don't have fear and a big wolf comes your way, and if you don't fight or flight, well, you'll end up in the belly of the wolf. But as we'll discover, there is a third way. There is a way where we can live without fear, and we can make really good and sound decisions without fear. As I said, I left my law practice to still be helpful to humanity. That was my motive in becoming a lawyer. But this time I was helpful not through legalities, but through spiritual ideas. And one day, someone came to see me and explained that some months ago, she had been diagnosed with a disease that was life-threatening. She explained that she was not into chemical response, and so even if the doctors were super kind and she could feel their care, she felt that was not for her. She liked nature and more natural response to healing. She had never heard about those ideas before, and so she asked for help. So I told her it's not about laying hands or giving products or even giving prayer. It is just about going back to Jesus' teachings, basically are all about our oneness with the infinite. Yes, without clergy, without a priest, our natural oneness with the one cause of all things that we can call God. You know, if I say the term apple right now, I think all of you mentally have an apple, maybe red or green, but an apple. If I say the term God, that's the one term where it can mean one thing and the opposite. So I really mean universal, infinite good. Not the God of a little club, that's also my God, you don't have it, or join us and you'll find God. No, really universal love. And when you go back to the Bible and you dust it of all human opinions and dogmas and stuff, that's what you get, a sense of infinite life. Not the life of the Jews and the life of the atheists, and too bad for the other guys, the other ones. No, it's just life for everyone. A bit like the principle of mathematics, it's owned by no one, it's accessible to everyone, and anyone can use it. You can also decide for your life that math don't exist and I won't respect it, and no surprise, life becomes a bit chaotic. So this woman asked what I could do for her, and I say, well, I can pray. Not on my knees, not on giving lots of words to repeat, but just this prayer that is really this awareness of God, this awareness of infinite good, right where the challenge seems to be. So we'll pray for a few months, and again, it was her decision to seek a natural way of healing, and so she stick to that. She didn't take any powder, no products, no nothing. She just stick with that approach. And what's really interesting is that over the course of a few months, you could see a massive shift, a very big change, not in the symptoms, not on things that were wrong in the body, although she'll be healed eventually, but you could not see that change at first. What you could see is a big change in her thought. And when we first met, you could almost touch the fear. I'm joking, you cannot touch fear, but it was so palpable that it was really, really strong. And gradually, you know what happened? Well, the thing that happened is the exact same thing that happens in life when you find yourself in a place that is very dark, without light, and you want to get rid of the darkness. To get rid of darkness, unlike the dust, you have to sweep the dust out. You don't sweep darkness away. It's not how it works. What do we do to get rid of darkness? Exactly. We turn on the light. Yes. Same with her. Her choice, the choice she had made not to over-focus on the diagnosis. And here again, I'm talking about a diagnosis, but it can be anything in our life that is bringing that tangible fear. Her choice not to focus on the cause of her fear, the diagnosis in that case, and her choice to really do whatever it took for her, not to be stuck in words. Again, apple is just a word. But if I say pomme in French, is this not an apple anymore? Well, the idea of the apple is intact, and someone may call it something else in Norwegian. So the point is not about words, it's really about the idea. Going back to the lady, so her focus on really the idea of God, not being stuck with words, but what did it mean to her was bringing the light in our consciousness. And you know what he did right away? It brought her a sense of peace. More peace. When Jesus was asked, well, how do you heal? Because the New Testament has all those stories of Jesus healing and healing others and teaching others how to heal. But when Jesus was asked, well, how do you heal? How can you heal? He said, I can do nothing of my own self. I can do nothing of my own self. And that's what this lady was learning, that it was not about her doing something, her sweeping the darkness away, but just turning on that light on. John says God is light. So it was really focusing on her sense of her oneness with God and the great cause of all, that is infinite God good. I just use the term cause as another word to describe the infinite. Can you have a cause if you don't have an effect? Well, those two go together. If you have something that is a cause with no effect, it's not a cause anymore, it's something else. And what is the effect of God? Well, you're sitting on it. We are the effect of God. No, not what the mirror shows us as a limited human material person, but as the expression of the infinite. Our oneness with God is identical with us being the effect of God. And this is what this woman was learning more and more, not to accept mentally material limitations, a history, maybe a sense of guilt, but to let go completely of the human narrative. The Apostle Paul says it's all about getting rid of the old man with its deeds, getting rid of this false sense of identity to embrace her oneness with God. And again, it's for all of us now. It's not about joining a little club. This is our natural state of being. What happened when all the fear left her, when there were still some symptoms, but she was not afraid anymore. She was really enjoying that spiritual journey on learning more who she was and the world around her. Well, one day she found herself completely healed physically. All the symptoms that were life-threatening, according to the diagnosis, were completely gone. And I talked to her recently, and she's healthy as ever, and jumping up and down and just doing well. And actually, she's helping others with those ideas. Whether it's disease, accident, unemployment, any challenge, we could call it really a lie about our oneness with God. And if you don't like the term a lie, I'll say, well, it was not my term. If you're not happy, don't be unhappy about me. That's Jesus' term. That's the term Jesus chose to use to describe evil, accident, disease, injustices. Jesus did not say, evil. So he did not say evil is this big, spooky, gigantic thing, and through the power of God we'll just destroy it. He did not say this at all. He called it a lie and the father of a lie. A lie about what? Well, a lie about the infinite presence of God. And I know we have just a short time together now, but in essence, this is the mechanism of prayer, that wherever an evil situation, a dark situation occurs in our life, that we always have a choice to yield to that oneness with the infinite, to find more of God, more of good in our life, and that's bringing the light in our life, and that's destroying the lie. What we seem to experience on a daily basis is really a state of consciousness. Our thought and our experience is the same thing, which explains how a change in our thought, not some form of positive thinking, because that would not solve anything, but this yielding to divine ideas, to a spiritual sense of the situation, does change our awareness and it changes our experience. And we call that healing. You would be welcome to push back and say, well, I don't like your story about the wolf and the flight or fly. I think fear is helpful, because what about when you feel stuck? It's not that you're afraid of something, you're just completely stuck in the mud, you're not sure what to do, if you should go left or right, and isn't fear helpful? Isn't fear bringing some wisdom so you don't take unwise decisions? That's a great question, and the answer is no. It's unnecessary. We don't need fear any more than we need darkness in our life. Some years ago, I was at the office, and I was still a lawyer, and my lovely boss came to see me at the desk, and with a sense of really urgency. Like she was not mean, but she was really strong, and she says, "Stop everything you're doing. You got to work on a new project for a client." And don't work on anything else. This is really urgent. And she had this expression on her face, and I'm not joking. It was basically a legal research, and so I set aside everything and I began to work on it. I'm overemphasizing the fact that she says don't work on anything, because after just a few minutes, I got into trouble. And the trouble was this, is that as we are discovering, it is not about self, this whole situation. This whole set of ideas is not about self, us doing more. It's about us doing less and being out of the way, ego out of the way, to embrace more of our oneness with God and letting more the still small voice, the Bible says, intuition lead our life, the voice of God, where it's not I want, but I'm out of the way and I'm just embracing ideas. So this is what got me into trouble. Well, not really, I'm joking, but the trouble was this, is after a few minutes, as I was doing the legal research, a thought came. At first, I thought it was a distraction, and the thought came to work on something else for the same clients. But I think, like all of us, I think we're vigilant. If we are supposed, to clean our entire house, and suddenly we got the thought to sit down and watch TV, if we're vigilant, we'll say, nah, I'll do the cleaning, that's a distraction. So that's what I felt. I felt I was being distracted. But the thought kept coming to work on this other thing, to the point that I had to stand from my desk and say, I was conflicted. I'm not supposed to work on anything else, and still that still small voice, intuition, people call it angels, nothing flying anywhere, but just a thought that comes to you. And the conflict was, what do I do? Well, there is no real conflict between light and darkness. There is just the temptation to believe darkness more than light. So when I realized that every single time, that's the rule without exception, every single time where we feel guided to do something, it will be a blessing. Abraham, Jonah, all those guys in the Bible have shown repeatedly, and in modern times too, how listening to that still small voice, we could say the Christ, that divine influence in consciousness that reveals our oneness with God. Every single time listening to it will bless us and our surrounding and our immediate people around us. So I decided to not work on this thing, despite the really urgent look on my boss's face. And as a disclaimer, I did not intend to be fired. I love my job. I was working abroad. It was not a way to commit professional suicide. No, it was really realizing that anytime we listen to God, basically, everyone is blessed. So I worked on this other thing for the same client for about maybe an hour and a half. And then my boss came back, and with a different look this time, and she said, well, I just had the client on the phone, and things have shifted completely for him. And anyway, forget what you were supposed to do early on, but please work on this new thing right now. And I mean right now. And so she explained what it was, and what was it? Indeed. And for those of you, our beloved one watching on the web, you didn't hear in the room, yes, my boss was asking me to do the thing that was already done because I had been guided to do it. So I received tons of congratulations, and with my sense of initiative and how amazing I was, well, I'd done nothing. It was just about listening. I remember receiving a phone call from the boss of my boss in the afternoon saying that, wow, that was really insightful. Well, remember I said the conflict. I did not want to do it. I wouldn't want to lose my job. But that's what happens when we yield to that divine sense. We're guided. I chose to put this little story in our talk here today because if we backtrack for half a second, what would have happened if I had chosen a different advisor? So the advisor I'd chosen through my study of Christian Science was the still small voice, the voice of God, that intuition. That was my advisor, and with the consequence we've just heard. But what if I had chosen fear as my advisor? What would have likely happened? Well, most likely I would say, no, I'm not supposed to do this. I want to keep my job. That's wise, that's prudent. I want to provide food for my family and stuff. And all this fear would have, in a way, impeded progress. So you can see the different quality of advisors. But we have a choice. I mean, we do testing in our life, and one will be tired of one advisor. I'm sure we'll run to the other one. You know, I like what... I love poetry, and I came across on the train here this line from Rudyard Kipling. Who doesn't know Kipling? He says, "Of all the liars in the world, sometimes the worst are our own fears." Of all the liars in the world, sometimes the worst are our own fears. In essence, I think we could define fear as the belief, the nourished belief in the absence of God. And it's a choice we make moment by moment. It's okay to be afraid, it's okay to make a wrong decision, but it's good to know that it is just a belief in the absence of infinite good. And at any point, as if we've been living in a really dark room for a long time, at any point we can take a match, scratch a match, and bring some light. It's always, always available. So now you may ask, well, what about really complex situations that really have to do with finances or unemployment or not having money? And if you don't have money, you're not going to go in the street and play the guitar. If you want to use your university degree, and how do you deal with this? Isn't it wise to be afraid? Well, I think by now, there would be a massive no. No, there's always a different way. You know, I used a few times now the term Christian Science, and it did not appear on its own. There's an author behind those terms, and the author is Mary Baker Eddy, who is also the author of the textbook of Christian Science, Science and Health with the Scriptures. And we would need another 10 hours to talk about this amazing woman, but let's break it down to maybe one element. Yes, she did live in the 19th, 20th century, but basically, she never accepted, yes, she was afraid sometime, but she never accepted to let fear rule her life. Whether it was chronic disease, whether it was, at one point, the whole church against her because of her silly idea that God could be infinite. And it feels obvious now, but back then it was, no, this is the God of some who will be saved and others will be doomed. And she said, no, I can't accept this. And if you look at her life from that angle, it's a life of really following Jesus' command, fear not, fear not. So I think she's a good model of thought there. And I do invite you to look at her biographies. They're really, really inspiring. So I mentioned finances a few seconds. Instead of more explanation, let's take another story. I said I was a lawyer, and one day I got what felt like a promotion. I was to go work as a lawyer in another country, and with an amazing job, and my whole family got to come with me. The move would be paid, and we'd have temporary housing for some time, and I looked at the salary, and the salary was twice as much as I was making in my firm, which was not a bad salary back then. So, private school, it'll be no problem. My wife cannot work because she doesn't have the right visa, no problem. I'll cover it, it'll be good. Well, shortly after, I realized that there was a slight oversight on my part, is that it is not so much about the amount of money you make, it is about how much you need to live. And I did realize that in this particular part of the world, in this particular city, well, things were 4 times more expensive than in Paris. So it does mean that, and if you've experienced this, you'll feel like, you'll see what I mean, it feels like you're February 1st, February 10, and you see the money going down, and February 15. And as the month progresses, money goes down, and you see bills coming up, and are you making the end of the month? And you're barely making it, or sometimes you're not making it. But I was not making enough money. It was really difficult. I'll go quick, so there was no alternatives, no going back, no borrowing money, no nothing. I was already working tons of hours, and there was no question that my wife would illegally be doing some work. The still small voice always leads us to a place of honesty and innocence, never lead us into doing dodgy things. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I said there is no mantra in Christian Science. It's not about repeating anything. As Jesus says, prayer is not about words. It's really about being inspired spontaneously. But I must confess that this Psalm 23 became some form of, not a mantra, but I was thinking a lot about this. Even if you walk in the valley of the shadow of death, you will fear no evil. And it felt like that a tiny bit. I had young kids and everything was expensive. And gradually, and to me that's an illustration of prayer, false beliefs came to the surface of thought. What is a false belief? Well, if you believe something falsely about you or the world, and as we've seen that because our state of consciousness and our experience is the same thing, what you believe, what you hold in thought is really important. And to make the story short, I felt I was in charge of the family. I was the one providing with my amazing salary. So I had to let go of this, let go of personal responsibility. The Lord is my shepherd. God governs. The Lord is my shepherd. We shall not want. We're not shepherds. We're lamb. We're being guided. Going back to what Jesus said, I can do nothing of my own self. So my job was not about getting more money or beating myself up for having placed the family in this situation. It was really about embracing more clarity and receiving more spiritual ideas that would come to thought. For example, that abundance is not something physical. Abundance is a state of consciousness. It's an awareness of wealth. Not gold and diamonds, but our wholeness, our completeness is our wealth. If I use an image, if you think of the number 1 and the number 6, who has more money? Who is richer? Who has more wealthy? The number 1 or the number 6? Well, it's irrelevant. The number 1 has everything it needs to be a number 1, and the number 6 has everything it needs to be a number 6. There's no point. So gradually, what I experience is almost like the onion peel, where you peel things off, where fears and false beliefs left my consciousness, and instead I found a great sense of joy. I still had no idea how things would play out, but that's okay. That's okay. Because in this very situation, and I think it applies to all situations, Jesus said, don't worry about all those things. Just focus on the kingdom of God. Focus on your oneness with God, and everything shall be added into you. It is never about changing material circumstances. It's not even changing a body. It's really about embracing more of God's presence, letting go of fear. This is where the work is done. And then everything shall be added into you. Well, that's the healing. That's the human experience being back to normal. I was being very discreet about our financial situation, and one day at the office, someone was leaving the organization to go back to home, and she asked for help and to help her move stuff in her small apartment so she could be on her way. So she asked me if I could help. I didn't talk to her about anything, but I said, yes, I'll be happy to come and help. So I did, and I remember pushing the door of a big studio with nice furniture, nicely furnished studio, and she said, hey, Alex, everything you see, you can have it if you like, because I got another place down there, and I'll have to get rid of all those things or sell it. So if it's of any use for you or your family, you can have it. The sofa, the kitchen stuff, like everything. It's like walking into a store, one of your favorite stores and the owner says, oh, take anything you like. Well, okay, that's more than 50% discount. It's amazing. No coincidence. We're not guilty of the challenges in our life. I'll say that 3 times because that's a temptation. We're not guilty of whatever is wrong in our life. We're not guilty of anything wrong in our life. But true, what we accept in thought will determine the outcome. So we're not guilty of fear, of disease. God, infinite good, never, ever punishes us. That's middle-aged theory. Infinite love is just love. So love is the solution. God is the solution to our challenge, is not the cause of it. But we always have a choice to embrace that sense of light, to embrace that sense of the infinite, right where the challenge seems to be. And that was the outcome. And to this day, I have 6 beautiful, amazing children. And the oldest one is still using that very sofa. It was a long time ago that was given to us for such good quality and such a comfy sofa that no one got rid of it. And it's still in her home. So sometimes she WhatsApp video me and we talk, and she's just sitting on that very sofa. It's a good reminder that indeed the Lord is our shepherd. We shall not want. So what we've seen is that basically the question is never about the fear, and the question is not even about, and even less about the whatever is making us afraid. A world situation, something at work, a bad news from the doctor, or anything else. That's not the question. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And are we going to really focus on that sense of light, of that sense of God, just like this woman with a diagnosis, or my situation at the office, or this recent example with the financial situation, and focusing on that light will, number one, bring us a deep sense of peace. And that's prayer. This is prayer. Prayer is yielding to the divine, and it will harmonize the situation. In the Bible, you got Isaiah saying something that could be the conclusion of our discussion here. And he says, it's Isaiah 41:10, fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. So you are the winner. We are the winner. There is never any real fight between darkness and light. Light always takes over. Light always wins, even the tiniest of light. Thank you.